Digital Literacy Narrative by Joshua Meehan. In the winter of '96, the Philadelphia tri-state area was blasted with a blizzard that put about 3 feet of snow on the ground. I was 8 years old, and for me that blizzard was nothing short of a miracle. I was free to enjoy the wonders of winter, snowball fights, snowmen, igloos, car hopping, and above all, no school. What was for me the freedom of snow days, for my parents it meant the responsibilities a snow day provides for an adult, something I came to learn about later. I specifically recall sitting in the foyer of my house, the brightness of the sun on the snow lighting up the room. I sat with my boot on my mother's knee as she tied up my laces nice and tight, and in the background one could hear the voice of Dave Roberts projecting from the JVC television set about the severity of the storm. At this time, it wasn't uncommon for people to have televisions. Over 1 billion households worldwide had at least one, and ours was a gigantic brown wooden box that rested on the floor. From the foyer, I could hear the sound of shovels scraping the pavement outside. My older brother Joey sat in the corner of the room, playing on what was at the time a foreign device to me, but would later become an essential part of my everyday life. He sat on a swivel stool, entranced by the greenish glow of a bulky screen, his hand on a beige clicking device, and at his feet a giant metal box of the same color. I knew then that the bulky greenish screen with the clicking thing was called the computer, but what I didn't understand was why my brother would prefer to sit and click at that screen rather than play in the snow. I went outside into the snow for those few days of winter, and for that whole year I never gave much of a crap about the computer in my living room. I spent most of my time outside, exploring the neighborhood, teasing girls, kicking cans, throwing rocks, digging holes, riding bikes into those holes, skateboarding, staying out too late, getting into trouble by my parents, getting into trouble with teachers, so on and so forth. And although I spent little time on the computer that year, 1996 was a pivotal time in the evolution of the personal computer. Google was formed in '96, and the number of U.S. homes with personal computers was 33.9 million. I didn't know it then, but Google would become one of the greatest resources in my everyday digital literacy. In 1997, my brother got a PC game called Duke Nukem 3D. This was the most violent, disgusting, inappropriate game I had ever seen, and I did whatever I could to learn how to play it. I stood next to him, hovering over his shoulder, watching him use the mouse and keyboard simultaneously to kill the enemy pigs in the game. He rarely let me play, and when I got the opportunity, I tried to imitate his mouse and keyboard maneuvering. Needless to say, I was no good, but it was one of my first memories of using a digital technology. In school, we had begun to learn typing. I was in 4th grade, and we would walk in single-file line down the hallway to a cold, electrical-smelling computer lab located on the 2nd floor of Mary Ethel Costello's school. We all had assigned computers with a number on the corner of the screen. The teacher, who reminded me of the smoking lady from the movie Beetlejuice, and whose breath reeked of cigarettes and coffee, would yell out to the class, "Put your fingers on the ASDFGKL semicolon keys, and always bring your fingers back to these keys." She would lean over our shoulders, breathe into our ears, and ask in her raspy voice that sounded like she was gargling rocks, "How many words per minute can you do this week? Or are you keeping your fingers on the proper keys?" I dreaded this class, partly because I was horrified at typing, and partly because the teacher's breath was terrible. But the class stood as a jumping-off point to learning a valuable skill that to this day has proved its worthiness. A few years had passed, and I went from learning typing and using simple software to using the internet and exploring new and unfamiliar digital platforms. My friends and I would download free trial American Online discs that we would get sent in the mail. We would spend hours and hours finding online chat rooms to cause trouble in, playing online games, exploring inappropriate websites, and in some respect becoming truly accustomed to this new literacy. Until, of course, the free trial ran out, and we would do anything to get another disc, sometimes even pray to God. My first glimpse at the internet through these free trial discs became somewhat of an obsession between my friends and I. We became less inclined to go outside and more inclined to hang out behind the computer screen. In 1999, as the digital world started to become a new way of life for me, a theory of chaos began flooding the airwaves of news stations everywhere. The theory was Y2K, and it proposed that the end of the digital era would end abruptly with the coming of a new millennium. I can remember being a tad bit scared, mostly because I was young and any threat or forewarning of potential danger left me feeling helpless. But essentially, to my now somewhat educated understanding, the Y2K theory began to circulate because people believed that computers would glitch and ultimately stop working altogether when having to distinguish the difference between 99 and the double zeros that the year 2000 provided. It sounds stupid, but it really did strike fear in people. Who knows, maybe the grocery store industry started one of the first viral trends. During the Y2K scare, sales at grocery stores increased 2% in December after gaining only 0.6 in November. In the year 2000, I got my first cell phone. It was a Nokia 3310, and this thing was nothing like the phone I have now. It was bulky and blue, with a tiny black and gray screen that lit up from a light bulb inside. At the time, it seemed like everyone had this phone, and it turns out that over 100 million were sold that year alone. But my world opened up incredibly when I got that phone. What the cell phone did, that I was not aware of at the time, was allow for me to have more space and freedom from the confining tyranny of my parents. It became a way out of childhood and into adulthood, and represented a mark of separation between my generation and theirs. The Nokia acted as a Vulcan to a young samurai in training, as an introductory tool to a more innovative and effective tool that is the katana, and in my case, the smartphone. Before the smartphone, certain avenues of the digital world needed to be accessed through different venues. I could text my friends on my Nokia phone, but I had to access the internet from my desktop computer. Reading on a cell phone was limited to text messages and toggle screens. If I wanted to read my favorite Hermann Hesse novel, I would have to go to my bookshelf. For every tool, there seemed to be a separate technology, and the early cell phones were limited to what they could do. However, this allowed for me to become versatile in using different technologies and acquiring new skills within each one of them. When I got my first smartphone, I was elated. I could do now all the things I had to do through separate venues, in one venue resting in the palm of my hand. I started to form an identity online. I created a MySpace account with a picture of me in the top left corner of the screen, a box underneath it with a few sentences about me, and a comment feed. On MySpace, I could upload songs to my page so that anyone who looks at it will hear the songs that represent me the most. Facebook quickly replaced MySpace. I don't remember why or how it happened, but I remember it happened pretty suddenly. I had a girlfriend at the time that all of a sudden started using Facebook. So being the insecure 15-year-old boy that I was, I created a Facebook account. Shortly following the birth of my Facebook account, MySpace was forgotten. Facebook became the hangout spot for everyone, and it completely changed the way people interact socially. With this, my digital identity became very important. I had to learn how to show the world that I am through a digital web page. Unlike MySpace, Facebook became an application you could download to your smartphone. Wherever you went, you kept your digital identity in your pocket. It became a constant source of reassurance and validation. If I posted a quote or a semi-intelligent thought, and if someone liked it, I was satisfied. I found that Facebook completely changed the way I interact socially. In many ways, part of my identity became a computer screen. Becoming fluent in the different digital literacies that have come about throughout my life has happened in a way that feels as though nothing really happened at all. I come from the frontier generation of digital literacies. Being born in 1988, there was a time when technology and things of the digital world played little role in my life. and as I aged, it became the way of the